This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 16 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Westford Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, April 18th, 1908, and I will add context as we read along to elaborate on what was happening in Westford 113 years ago. The first section this week is the About Town section. At the annual meeting of the First Parish Church, Unitarian, held in the vestry of the church last Saturday evening, the treasurer reported all bills paid and a small balance in the treasury. H.V. Hildreth was chosen moderator, and the following officers and committees were elected: A.J. Abbott, clerk; A.J. Abbott, Miss Clara Fisher, Charles O. Prescott, Prudential Committee; Miss Ruth Fisher, Miss Eva Fletcher, Miss Julia H. Fletcher, Music Committee; W.H.H. Burbeck, Edward Fisher, H.V. Hildreth, Assessors; H.V. Hildreth, Auditor, and Charles O. Prescott, Treasurer. The selectmen have offered a reward of $100 for the capture of the recent horse thieves who have been perambulating in the southern part of the town. Mr. Shorey was particularly unfortunate, having lost one horse by death and one by thief, the thief horse being valued at $300. At present, Mr. Shorey is restricted in liberty by a surgical operation. The selectmen have made personal efforts to capture the thieves, but thus far thieves show no more respect for selectmen than for any private citizen. Reverend Seth Hurd Walker, who was briefly alluded to last week as one of the Stony Brook boys, and who has been sharpening the edge of memory along these lines at the old Walker homestead for the past 2 weeks, has been appointed minister of the Second Advent Church in Highland Hall, Branch Street, Lowell. It is understood that this branch of the Second Advent Church observes Saturday for Sunday. Here is a nearby opportunity for old schoolmates and friends to give a little encouraging enthusiasm and to witness the evolution from the associations of youthful school days to the dignity of the ministry. Mr. Walker will live in Dracut for the present, and thither his goods were being moved Wednesday. Last week, Friday, when the wind was blowing and all the breath it had in it, the chimney at the Putney place on Francis Hill used violent demonstrations and threatened to burn the house up. This alarmed the neighbors, and the church bell alarmed others. It was hastily decided not to allow the chimney to burn the house up. After about 2 hours' threatening attitude, the contact of the chimney with cold water made it dry up. There's a reference there to Francis Hill, and in the Wardsman of 100 years ago, it seemed to always be spelled Francis, but it's properly spelled Frances. It was named after the wife of one of the first settlers there. The usual annual fire on Oak Hill occurred last Tuesday. A telephone call from Selectman Otis L. Wright of Tingsboro to Selectman Oscar R. Spaulding asking for help was liberally responded to. As Oak Hill burns over regularly once a year, and sometimes without regard to regularity, the damage is lessened in proportion to the frequency of the fires. The annual dance of the Westford Athletic Association in Dancing for Profits occurred last week on Friday evening. Owing to the crowds who were not there, it was a narrow escape from dancing without profits. Hibbard's Orchestra of Lowell. At a meeting of the selectmen Tuesday evening, the call for bids for constructing the balance of the road from Parkerville to the Carlisle line were opened and read. The following were received: Mr. Hall of Littleton, $2,455. H.W. Tarbell of Lowell, $2,259. Mr. Gaffney of Newton, $2,213.25. John A. Healy of Graniteville, $1,974.90. Mr. Healy was awarded the contract, his bid being $238.35 below the next highest bid. Louis W. Palmer and Albert Reeves have applied for license to sell everything that Yes allows. That's a reference to the recent referendum that allowed the sale of intoxicating spirits in town. 6 days in the week and a portion of the darkness belonging to said 6 days can be voted to selling to Yes customers. Mr. Palmer lives on Main Street, Graniteville, being the owner of a large stone quarry. Mr. Reeves lives on the corner of Main Street and River Street, Graniteville, North Main Street that would be, and River Street's Graniteville, being the proprietor of a fruit store. The selectmen have, according to law, viewed the premises, and their judgment on granting these applications has been reserved. The 19th of April, coming on Sunday this year, the patriotism of the day will find display on Monday, the 20th, when the mills of Graniteville and Forge Village will close. Special music at the Unitarian Church Sunday, appropriate to Easter. The Albert R. Schote Hose Company will give their first dance at Town Hall on Friday evening, April 24th. Late electric cars will accommodate attendees. The next section is the Westford Center section. Miss Morrill, assistant to Drs. Sleeper and Wells, has returned from New London, New Hampshire after several days spent there in the family of Dr. Griffin. Miss Morrill has been employed by him in numerous cases, but in this instance it was the doctor himself in need of her ministrations during an operation for appendicitis. Owing to some derangement in waterworks, the tryout for the Edward M. Hose Company to have taken place on Wednesday has been postponed until further notice. That a serious fire was in progress to the southeast was very evident to residents of our hilltop village last Sunday afternoon. All the afternoon, the cloud of black smoke was very evident, and as darkness came on, it was still more evident that a devastating fire was taking place. In the evening, report reached town that it was in Chelsea and East Boston. I'll add that this truly was a disastrous fire. It's called the Great Chelsea Fire of 1908. It started around 11 a.m. on April 12th in western Chelsea near the Everett border. A strong west wind drove the fire eastward, and it fanned out to the north and south. The fire burned throughout the day and well into the night, destroying 350 acres. Most public buildings were destroyed, including City Hall, the Public Library, the Armory, 13 churches, only 4 churches remained, 9 schools, 3 banks, and 2 hospitals. In all, 2,822 buildings were lost, along with 708 shade trees. A week after the fire, 19 people were known dead, and 75 were still missing. About 16,000 people were left homeless, and the total damage was valued at $17 million. East Boston was threatened by the fire, and several oil storage tanks were lost there, but no buildings. You can read more about this fire in the Boston Daily Globe in articles published on April 13th and April 18th, 1908, and there is also a Wikipedia article about it. Miss Ida M. Manuel, our academy teacher, has the sympathy of her many friends in the recent sickness and death of her mother at Franklin Falls, New Hampshire. The next section is congregational, about the Congregational Church. There was a good attendance at the Congregational Church Sunday morning. Mr. Marshall gave his hearers a good sermon, a thoughtful pre-Easter meditation. In the evening, the new stereopticon was used, and the 23rd Psalm was the subject of the evening's discourse, the beautiful colored slides being clearly elucidated by the pastor as they were thrown upon the screen. The illustrated songs were sung by audience under the leadership of the choir leader, Miss Carrie S. Atwood. Special preparations are being made to commemorate the beautiful Easter season on Sunday. Sermon, music, and decorations in the morning will be in significant harmony with the meaning of the day. There will be a service in the auditorium in the evening with a sermon and a fine chorus of men's voices. Reverend Charles P. Marshall, Miss Lily B. Atwood, and Miss Carrie S. Atwood were delegates chosen and who attended the spring meeting of the Middlesex Union Conference of Churches, which met with the church in Boxborough Wednesday. The next section is called Concert. As has been the custom for several seasons, those in charge of monthly socials at the Congregational Church varied their gatherings with one concert in the auditorium. The social for April took this form Wednesday evening and fully sustained the high standard of those of previous years. Miss Alice Cohn of Boston, soprano soloist, came as an old friend with her clear, sweet voice and charming personality. Of the number of times she has appeared before a Westford audience, she was never in better voice than on Wednesday evening. Mrs. Marshall ably accompanied Miss Cohn at the piano in her varied selections. Robert Howes Burnham of the Emerson School, Boston, completely won the audience with his happy, genuine gift of impersonating a wide range of human emotions, from grave to gay. Both he and Miss Cohn graciously responded to a number of encores. The following well-balanced program was given: Faith in Spring, Love Song, I Love Thee, songs by Miss Cohn; Through Fire and Water, reading by Mr. Burnham; May Morning, Miss Cohn; comedy, A Bit of Instruction by Mr. Burnham; Sing On by Miss Cohn; Pro and Con, a monologue, and The Young Man Waited, and In the Days of Youth, all by Mr. Burnham. The next section is the Graniteville section. The baseball season will open here on Monday, April 20th, when the Sons of Rest, that's in quotes, will play the strong AWC, or Abbott Worsted Company team. Tom McCarthy and Heeman will do the battery work for the S of R, that is the Sons of Rest, which I guess is the name they were giving to the Graniteville team in 1908, while Bob McCarthy and J.A. Healy will perform a like service for the AWC. The game will be played on the regular ball grounds here at 3 p.m., and as both clubs have numerous followers, a red-hot game is expected. Dr. Sherman of Daramuscata, Maine, the father of Dr. William H. Sherman of this village, that is Graniteville, made a brief visit with Dr. and Mrs. Sherman last week, previous to starting on his annual trip to Washington, D.C. Palm Sunday was fittingly observed in St. Catherine's Church last Sunday, when Mass was celebrated at 7:45 o'clock. The blessing of the palms took place before Mass, the ceremony being performed by Father McNamara, the celebrant of the Mass. The palms were then distributed to the members of the congregation. The reading of the Passion of our Divine Lord was done by Thomas Rafferty, Jr., the head altar boy, in an able manner. The choir sang special music appropriate for the day. The last of the Lenten devotions for this season took place in St. Catherine's Church on Good Friday night and were largely attended. After the services were ended, the Adoration of the Cross took place, during which the entire congregation went forward to the altar rail. The measles are prevalent throughout the village, and up to date, over 30 cases have been reported. Many of the older people have been afflicted with the disease, as well as the children, but fortunately their condition is not considered serious. The members of the A.R. Schote Hose Company are busy perfecting arrangements for their social dancing party to be held in Westford Town Hall the Friday after Easter. I might add that the spelling of Albert Schote's last name, which has been recently mentioned quite a bit, is Choate. The Literary Club of the Methodist Episcopal Church is busy rehearsing for an entertainment to be given in Westford Town Hall early in May. As this is the first social effort made by this newly formed society, and many of the members are well known as entertainers, it is conceded that this coming event will be a big success. The next section is called Club. The members of the Fortnightly Club of North Westford held an interesting meeting at No. 9 Schoolhouse last week Friday evening, and after the routine business of the meeting was over, the following pleasing program was given: prayer, Mr. Kai's, opening song by the audience, Recitation, Grace Robinson. Vocal duet, Mr. and Mrs. Edwin Gould. Reading, Fred Blodgett. Phonograph selections, Lucy Lambert. Reading, H.E. Gould. Song, Maud Robinson. Reading, Lillian Wright. Song, Mrs. Emily Blodgett. Reading, Alice Gould. Phonograph selections, Miss Lambert. Violin selections, Arthur Blodgett. Recitations, Frank Chandler. All who took part acquitted themselves with credit, special mention being made of Miss Alice Gould of Chelmsford Center, whose excellent reading was done in faultless style and was a treat to all those present. The next meeting of the club will be held in 2 weeks. The next section is the Forge Village section. Mr. and Mrs. Charles Blodgett entertained about 50 of their friends Saturday evening at their home, The Ridges. William Burnett entertained the party with pleasing selections on his phonograph, and there were games and other music. At 10:30, a dainty lunch of cake, coffee, and lemonade was served. Mrs. Edith Precious, Ada, and Janie Cottrell assisted the hostess in serving. Miss Annie Lindale gave selections on the cornet, which were much enjoyed. The party broke up at a late hour, everyone expressing themselves as enjoying this evening very much, and after wishing the host and hostess many good wishes, the friends departed. I believe the Charles Blodgett family actually lived in Groton in an area called the Ridges, just to the west of Forge Village, but their social life seemed to center around Forge Village, as the Blodgetts are mentioned quite a bit in the Forge Village, in the Wardsman from the Forge Village area. John Edwards has purchased the King boarding house of Mrs. Margaret King of Green Bay, Wisconsin. The Hudson Darling of East Dedham was in town Sunday, his first attempt at getting about since his injury during ice cutting at Island Pond last winter. The first call for village fire department was for a chimney fire at the home of John Baker Wednesday morning. No damage was done. Harry Brown has accepted the position of assistant lineman on the Lowell and Fitchburg Street Railway. And that's the news in Westford for the week ending April 18th, 1908. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Nick Woodbury of WestfordCAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions from the Westford Wardsman at the Westford Historical Society's website at museum.westford.org, or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from a century ago. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.